Level Up is a regular podcast that brings you topics to help you perform at work and in life at your very highest level. Your host is Dan Kyoto, an executive coach, corporate trainer, and author. He is president of Impact Training and Executive Coaching. And now, here's Dan.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and welcome to Level Up Studios. This is your link to lifelong learning. So let's get started. You know, we talk about proactivity. It's much better to be proactive than reactive to things. We learn that in life, and we learn that at work too. We're always asked, are you being proactive with this or that? And in our lives, things happen to us sometimes, and we say, next time I'm going to prepare in advance. So question for you, what about being proactive at a young age? What about being so industrious that you start your own business while in college, but you also plan a new career for after you graduate from college? Our guest today is originally from Greenwood, South Carolina, and is only 22 years old. He lives in Fort Myers, Florida, and is proactively building a very solid strategic plan for his life. He graduated from Florida Gulf Coast University with a degree in finance and a minor in entrepreneurship. So today, I welcome Adam Best to our Level Up stage. So welcome, Adam. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me.
You know, I want to start back to whenever you started to work, because I know you're so industrious, and I'm just wondering, what was the first job you ever had?
So pretty much detailing, I've been doing that for over 6 years now. That was pretty much my first job. I was in my community when I was growing up in high school, starting to wash cars, and I had a passion for it. I was pretty good at it, and I've always liked cars. So it kind of just took off from there and grew into many other things. I've helped to build car washes. I've helped design car washes for people, and everything just kind of has stayed in that area of automotive. Same with automotive, not detail shops, but mechanic shops. I've also stayed there in Tampa and worked on building some with some of my friends. And I've always had like a passion for automotive things. So I've tried to keep to that and stick to something that I know instead of branching out and doing like multiple things in different jobs. But I've been working for quite a while on automotive parts and cars.
Now, that's interesting. You say that you delved into that area. Did you volunteer? How did you get your knowledge? Did you volunteer for some of that or get paid for some of what you learned too?
So pretty much when I started, it was just like, using basic materials and chemicals and watching YouTube videos, honestly, on how to correctly wash a car, because it seems like it's pretty easy, but there's ways to do it to minimize scratches and stuff in the paint. And obviously I've met some people that had some businesses, had the car washes, had these mechanic shops. And as I detailed their cars, they kind of started to get a liking for me. And since I'm young and I'm, kind of know what my generation wants, I've helped design car washes for people, install lights, things like that. And I've been super hands-on. I'm really good with my hands with everything. So it kind of just took off from there and seems to have been working pretty well since.
That's real talent when you are good with your hands like that, but also going to the university and taking that route too. Before we hop off your business, what did you name your business? What's the name?
So Best Shine Automotive Detailing. Came up with that name because my last name and shine. Obviously, you want a car to shine, so Best Shine. It was just a simple name, but it works.
That's good. That's good. And it makes sense too.
Exactly.
Sometimes when I'm driving, I'll look at names of businesses and I'll say, why would they go with that? You're never going to remember it. So
right.
That's really good. You came up with a good one. So Let me ask you, you are very methodical about what you do. You're telling us how you learn things from YouTube and other places to get the knowledge base that you have. And so with your business and with what you learn in college, did you come up with a strategic plan for your business, or is it kind of just organic? You just let it go?
I'd
How do
say
you design it?
it's pretty organic. So I started it obviously before I went into school back in high school, like I said. And in high school, they don't really teach you how to run a business or even start one for that matter. And so at first, I really didn't have much knowledge on how to run and operate a business, but I got a liking to, helping people and seeing, what I can do for them. And it just, brings a smile to my face. It makes me feel good when I can satisfy other people. And at the same time, I feel like that's really, if you can figure out that and get that down packed, business really isn't too difficult. I think people are they get scared about starting a business. There's many overwhelming factors to it, but if you take it slowly, step by step, I think it's a lot easier than people think.
That's right. And some of what you're talking about, customer service, and obviously you, I am told, are very good at time management and organization and that sort of thing. I know when I wrote my book on time management that I had a lot of young professionals coming to lectures saying, we don't really get a whole lot of this in college. So did they touch upon that at all in college, how to handle your time? Or,
I think that's a good point. They really didn't. I think just as you have to make your own schedule. So whenever you register for classes, you have to pretty much take exam times because exam times could be different than your class times. And if that clashes with another class, it won't necessarily let you take that class when you register. So you have to strategically plan each one to your schedule. And a lot of people have jobs, full-time jobs. So you have to make that schedule go with your job. So I don't think school teaches you that. I think that's just something you have to, unless you have a lot of time on your hands, it's something you have to teach yourself. And school, I would say school definitely does not teach you that.
Well, universities offer us a lot. They're very enriching.
Oh, yeah.
And I like to note the things that we will probably have to gain in life itself. So one is time management. The other one, I think, would be customer service. Is that something you kind of had to learn outside of the college setting?
Right. So customer service, I think social skills. So that's probably the biggest thing I've gotten out of school is social skills. It's been a huge factor on how to talk to people, how to use the correct terminology, and how to sell yourself, especially if you have a business. School teaches you the social skills, but not necessarily on how to use them, if that makes sense. So just going through classes, like in COVID, that's been a huge thing. So like this online stuff it makes things a lot more difficult, especially for, incoming freshmen and sophomores and stuff, because that's a huge, I think that's the biggest thing I've gotten out of school is just social skills, talking to professors, talking to people that come into the class that have started up very successful businesses. And I think, that's probably one of the most important things, but I don't think school teaches you that directly. It's more of, it just happens if you, pay attention to it.
So probably a lot of the things we need to learn, we learn from parents, from life, and from college too, but it's nice to have that all blend together. How many people help you in your business?
So my parents support me, but I started everything and I don't really get much help other than maybe an employee here and there. So that's the pressure washing side of things. That's the only time I get an employee to help me is when we do pressure washing. We have to move a lot of heavy things. It's just easier with two people. We move it, pressure wash, move it back in. And it's just hard to kind of do that, very thoroughly by yourself. So detailing is 100% me. It's pretty hard to learn how to do paint corrections and stuff and the more in-depth things. You can burn through clear coat. So there's a lot of steps to it, and it takes a lot of time to learn how to do it perfectly. And I got it down pretty good. But right now, I don't have anyone helping me for detailing.
So you decided to add. You were talking about concentrating on what you know. So you
Exactly.
obviously know detailing,
Right.
but then you decided to add something else, the pressure washing. So you did do something a little different. What made you add that on? Where did you see the need for that?
So pressure washing, I try to stick into the cleaning services still. So I added pressure washing because it's, I'm still working with water, and I know I use a pressure washer for cars as well. And I noticed a need in our community, especially on driveways and sidewalks. Started to get moldy, and I've noticed another company that comes around and he does a decent job. And I figured I could do just as good, if not better, and charge a little bit lower prices or try to keep them the same. And it just happened to work out pretty well. And I expanded into, I think, 5 communities within 2 months and over 100 clients in 2 months, which was, it really took off compared to detailing. Detailing was very hard to get that many clients. I think it's hard to get people to trust you with their cars. But when you price out something very competitive to other companies and you do a very good job, it was easier for me to expand pressure washing a lot quicker that way. And then I also got into doing the gutters and soffits, which was the next stage in pressure washing.
That is great. I keep wanting to mention that you're 22 years old. I just find this fascinating that you would figure some things out that sometimes it takes people a lot longer to figure out. The whole obsession with what that customer wants, what you see out there that they might need, and you were there to do that. So I think that is just fascinating to look at. Yeah. And this is Dan Chiodo. My guest today is Adam Best. And on the flip side, I'm dying to find out what it is that he's going to go into. Even though he has his own business, he wants to do something else. First, we'll have a word from our sponsor. And yes, you are watching Level Up.
Here is F45 Training. The F stands for functional training, a mix of circuit and HIIT-style workouts geared towards everyday movement. 45 is the total amount of time for sweat-dripping and heart-pumping fun. With thousands of exercises in our database and an almost infinite amount of combinations, our sessions are always fresh and innovative. Put that all together, and F45 Training is here to bring you one of the world's most innovative workouts. Now let's take a class. Find your local F45 studio from our locations all around the globe. Once inside, our trainers will be there to greet you and check you in. First, we'll demo each exercise while you watch from the blue track. A warm-up will follow, then it's time to find your station. Want to play-by-play? Track your heart rate with F45 Lionheart. Ready in 3, 2, 1, it's go time. F45 TV will guide you. F45 FM will move you. And our trainers will support you every step of the way. This is team training. This is life-changing. This is F45.
If you are just tuning in, I'm Dan Chiodo. My guest today is Adam Best. And he is talking about entrepreneurship. He's talking about what he's going to do with his life. And did I mention that he's 22 years old? And so now we're going to explore something very unique, because as I learn about his very successful business, how he's approached it, the fact that he's dealt with one type of business and maybe added on to that, but very carefully, and been very successful. So now he tells me what he wants to do is to pursue something else. But first, Adam, you said that you're still going to maintain your business. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to find somebody that can run it for me, and I would work it on the weekends. But I'm looking to expand into possibly being a financial advisor for some corporate companies.
Okay, and before we go into that, this is going to sound like a help wanted ad. But if you're looking for that right person, because I know you a little bit, I know what you're all about. So describe, if you're going to let someone else handle that while you do what you want to do, what qualities does that person have to have?
It's a really good question. So it's hard to really find somebody to take over a business right off the back. So I have a big group of friends, and they're a little younger than me. I think they're sophomores and juniors in school. But the big thing is I'm looking for somebody that's a freshman. And it's really hard to find somebody with qualities that I'm looking for as a freshman because you're so young. I think it takes, it definitely takes hard work and dedication, but you have to have passion. And those, also the time management, like we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Extremely hard your freshman year because you get out of high school, you have endless amounts of time, it seems like, when you're in high school. And when you get into college, things actually do buckle down and you have to figure out how to manage your time. So to find somebody with all those traits is very, very hard. It's not impossible, but it's definitely going to be difficult. So that in itself will be a job, just looking for someone. But yeah, the qualities, they definitely have to be passionate, hardworking. You have to be outgoing. So there's many things I have to look for the next person to take this over. And I'd be training them, but
yes.
It'll be tough.
Well, now let's look at what you want to pursue. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my sister's boyfriend, she has he's friends with one of the presidents of Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley they give investing advice, their brokerage. And I've been looking to get into some of that as I'm a finance major. I do have a passion for stocks and the market and how it works. Big businesses, how they open up and have IPOs. It's pretty interesting to see how everything works and how in depth it can get. So I'm leaning more towards trying to go into Morgan Stanley for about 1 to 2 years, maybe being a financial advisor or somebody that analyzes the stock, an analyst per se. But I know I wouldn't start up very high, but just learning like the basics and being really well-rounded would be awesome for me, because I would not want to work in a job for more than 5 years. But the plan for me is to hopefully learn how to invest for myself. And I can do that and have a business at the same time later on in the future. And then if I can somehow make it with hard work, I will be able to invest and retire at an earlier age. So that's the goal, is to be really well-rounded.
I was going to ask you what you see down the road, but you've already told me. So that's great. So, if you did have early retirement, I don't know how you could ever retire. Do you think you'd ever stop working?
Yeah, that's a big thing. So I love working. Like, I like to go out and have, vacations and go out with friends and stuff, but there's a pretty fine line that I draw, and I do love working. I think it's really fun. It's great to see, people being satisfied with something that you give or produce. And I don't know if I'll ever stop working per se, but that's where the investing would come in. It's that in itself is a job too. Looking at stocks, analyzing different portfolios. It's pretty complex, and I have a pretty big passion for it. But when I'm older, I won't be able to, do as much work in the field. No matter how healthy I can stay, I don't think I'll be able to do many of the things I can do right now. So I have to set myself up for that.
Right. And so what courses would you say at the university prepared you for looking into wealth management? Any particular courses that really helped you tune into that? Right.
So my senior year is pretty much my main courses. It's going to be securities, financial securities, and policy class. Security and policy. Those two are probably the main courses at FGCU that teach you everything to do with markets, money markets. It's pretty crazy. You learn about betas and alphas and how those judge stock prices, if they're overvalued or undervalued. You calculate prices, earnings per share, EPS, things like that. And there's many different ways to, that other firms calculate these prices. It's pretty interesting. But those are probably the two main courses. And then you have like financial accounting, which is more on the accounting side. So leveraging companies, things like that, your debts, your equities and assets. And that's, you have to learn each sector. But in stocks as a whole, policies and securities are one of the two classes that help me understand the market the best and will help me pursue a job and actually understand what they're saying and asking me.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You've rolled all the right things together, Adam. It's so interesting to talk to you because we've covered time management, organizational skills, communication, customer service, and these are all such important components of leadership.
Of course,
and that's really what you're all about. You're a leader at a young age. So does that feel good to be in that position?
It does. It does feel very good, actually. I don't feel any better than anyone else, but it does make me feel like I'm doing something right.
Yes. And, I think that's a really important concept and maybe a good point for us to end on. You don't feel any better than anyone else. So I've met people in all walks of life. I've met all types of CEOs. Some of them, we know their names because they're more extroverted, more outgoing. And some we don't even know their names. They run wonderful companies, but they just are more quiet. And then better yet, when they don't think they're better than anyone else, that's what really makes a happy life, I think, and good conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. It was great.
It's great. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Level Up. You're going to have show notes. So some of the things that Adam has told us about, you will read about. What I would do is say to yourself, okay, I may not be 22. I may be a little older than that or younger than that. Could be either way. But look at some of these things that he's put to work in his life and see if there's something that you should be doing in your life. In fact, even if you are a seasoned professional, doesn't mean that you might not be thinking of something else you would like to do. So take one point from the show notes and come back again and just keep taking one by one so that you become the person that you want to be. We will save you a front row seat for the next episode of Level Up. And now, Dustin, hey, I think it's time to take us out.
If you feel like this information was valuable to you, Dan would love it if you'd click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, please leave a comment. Also, if you're a first-time subscriber, be sure to ring that bell to be notified about future episodes. To learn more about what Impact Training and Development can do for you and your business, visit impactbydan.com, where you can find more information about executive coaching, corporate training, keynote speaking, and much more. Thanks so much for watching.